Greetings and welcome to Supplemental video lecture on factoring. It dawned on me when I was looking back at my videos that I didn't show you one more method on how to factor. And this method I would use if my coefficient in front of the first term is not 1. So in another video I showed you how to just break apart the first term, break apart the second term, find some combination that maps to the middle number. Now this method I think is a little bit easier to use, or at least faster, because you're only going to have to factor down one term versus two terms and find some magic combination. You'll break down one term and find that magic combination. So let me just run through some examples and how to work through factoring. First thing I always look for is GCF. If I can pull out a GCF, then it makes my problem a little bit more simpler. So 30x squared y minus 5xy squared minus 10y cubed. Between the coefficients 30, 5, and 10, I definitely can pull out a 5. And then I have an x squared y, xy squared, and a y cubed. I can pull out a y. That leaves behind a 6x squared minus xy minus 10y squared. Now here's the quote-unquote new method that I'm going to show you. Instead of trying to figure out all of the factors of 6, all of the factors of negative 10, and finding some magic combination to add up to the negative 1 that's in the middle, remember that's an implied 1 there, here's what I'm going to do. Did I say, I did do that, right? That should be a 2, sorry, a 2. So I'm going to find a magic combination of a 6 times a negative 2. So 6 times a negative 2, that's going to be 6 times a negative 2. I want some magic combination to end up being a negative 1. Now the good part about it is, although the 6 times a negative 2 is a negative 12, and normally I would have to consider both the positives and the negatives, I know I have to be a negative 1, so my larger number is going to be the negative number. So my factors of 12, I'm just going to write off to the side here. It's going to be 12 and 1, 6 and 2, 4 and 3. So I need some combination of those three guys to end up adding to a negative 1. And remember, my larger number is negative. So if I add these two together, it's going to be negative 11, negative 4, and negative 1. That's my combination. I'm going to rewrite the middle term as a negative 4xy and a positive 3xy. So 5y, 6x squared minus 4xy plus 3xy minus 2y squared. You may have thought, well, this doesn't look easier. It is. It's a lot easier. Otherwise, I would have had to find 6 and 1, 3 and 2, 2 and 3, 1 and 6, and then likewise with the negative 2, it's negative 2, 1, negative 1, 2, positive 2, negative 1. It's a lot of combinations versus, I only had 3 combinations, versus a whole bunch of combinations and having to mixture it all up. So if you do this, I think this method works a little bit faster than the trial and error method. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these guys together. So I'm going to group the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms. I'm going to pull out something that they each have in common. Okay. So the 5y is just going along for the ride. If I pull out definitely an x, but it looks like a 2x, leaves behind a 3x minus 2y. And then in the second couple, it looks like I can definitely pull out a y. Anything else? No, it looks like that's it. A positive y can come out, leaving me 3x minus 2y. Aha! Now they both have something in common, a GCF, so I can pull that out. 5y 3x minus 2y is what they have in common. That leaves behind the 2x plus y. And I'm done. That's my final answer. So you can see, to me, this sped up my process a little bit. I still had to think about it, but it did speed up my process a little bit. Let me work through another example. So, using this method, I need 4 times a negative 3, which is a negative 12. But I need it to add up to negative 1. The cool part about it is we already kind of figured it out earlier. Okay? Here's my negative 1 right here. So it's negative 4 and a 3. But if I had to, I'd break down the negative 12. Again, I know my larger number is going to be negative because the sign in the middle is negative. I'm going to rewrite the middle term using the negative 4 and the 3. 4x squared minus 4x plus 3x minus 3. Group them. Pull out which each group has in common. A 4x, leaving behind x minus 1, plus 3x minus 1. And now I can definitely see they both have an x minus 1 in common. So x minus 1, 4x plus 3. And I'm done. That was pretty quick versus 4 would have had 4 and 1, 2 and 2. 3 was a 3 and 1, but remember it's negative, so it could have been a negative 3 and a positive 1, or a negative 1 and positive 3, and then a mixture of all those. So I think this was definitely faster for this particular problem. Alright, so I'm going to work this method once again. Always look for GCF first. So this problem, 12y cubed plus 10y squared minus 12y, it definitely looks like I have a 2 in common with all of the coefficients, and I have a y in common. If I pull out a y squared, that leaves behind a 6y squared plus 5y minus 6. Okay. So using my method, not my particular method, but the method I am using, it is 6 times a negative 6 gives me a negative 36, and I need to add to a positive 5. That definitely tells me that my larger number is going to be the positive number. I don't know all the factors of 36 off the top of my head, but I do know, let's see, definitely 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and 5, and of course 6 and 6. And remember, the larger number is positive, so the smaller number in this case is going to be negative. If I add those two together, well, let's see, that's going to be 35. Move it over just a little bit. It's going to be 35, 16, 9, 5, and 0. So it looks like my combination is going to be a negative 4 and a positive 9. Now it doesn't matter how I write these in, 9 and a negative 4. Both of those will get me back up to the negative 36, and they do add to a 5. So I'm going to just rewrite that middle term using the 9 and the 4. 6y squared plus 9y minus 4y minus 6. Again, I'm going to group them and pull out GCFs of both of these new two terms. 2y is going along for the ride. 6 and 9 looks like the common factor there is a 3, and a y squared and a y is going to be a y. If I pull out a 3y, that leaves me 2y plus 3. A negative 4y and a negative 6. I can pull out a negative 2. That leaves behind a 2y plus 3. Now, is there anything else that I can factor? Yes, they both have the 2y plus 3. So last task is to pull out the GCF of each term. That leaves behind a 3y and a minus 2. And I am done with this problem. This one would have been pretty difficult if I didn't use this kind of side method here, in my opinion. Now I encourage you to kind of stop and do the problem before I do. You've seen the method a couple of times. Try this problem on your own before I work through it, so pause the video or do whatever, but I'm going to continue working through. I look at the problem and I see, is there any GCF that I can pull out immediately? And no, there's not. So I am going to multiply 3 and negative 14. 3 and negative 14, that's going to give me a negative 42. And I need to add some combination up to a negative 1. Now if I'm clever about it, I can figure it out pretty quickly. If I don't know all the factors of 42, and remember the larger one is going to be negative because my middle term is negative, I'm not too sure, so I'm going to break it apart. 1 and 42, 2 and 21, 3 and 14, 4 does not go into it, 5 does not go into it, 6 and 7, and remember the larger one this time is negative. So combine the two, negative 41, negative 19, negative 9, and a negative 1. So there is my combination, a 6 and a 7. So negative 7 and a 6. So I'm going to rewrite that middle term using negative 7 and a 6. But I do want to kind of look forward and kind of see, can I make this easier on myself by writing it a very certain way? Well, 3 and 7 don't have anything in common, but 3 and 6 do. And 14 and 6 have, well, it has a 2 in common, but the 14 and 7 have kind of more in common. So I'm actually going to write it, that middle term, as 3x squared plus 6xy minus 7xy minus 14y squared. If you didn't see that, that's okay. You would have ended up with the same answer that I'm going to get. So not to fret. The answer will be the same no matter which order you do the middle term in. And I'm going to group them. Pull out common factor, so 3x, leaving me x plus 2y. Out of the negative 7xy minus 14y squared, I can definitely pull out the negative 7, but they both have a y in common. That would leave behind an x plus 2y. Now again, I can look at this and pull out what they both have in common, which is the x plus 2y. Leaving behind 3x minus 7y. And I'm done. I want to show you this one last problem because you might feel yourself that you're stuck, and I want to give you some insight on how to unstuck yourself or unstick yourself. I don't know. So I'm going to run through the first part using our method of 6 times 2 is a 12, and I need two numbers to add to a 7 but multiply to 12. So we have 12 plus 1, 6 plus 2, 4 plus 3. Well, it looks like it's going to be 4 plus 3 because 6 plus 2 is 8, 12 plus 1 is 13. So 4 and 3 are our new magic numbers to rewrite the 7a in. So 6a squared plus 4a plus 3a plus 2. And then I can continue on with my method of grouping, pulling out the GCF of each of these terms. So 6, if I pull out a 2a, that leaves behind a 3a plus 2. And then in the second term, is there anything that I can pull out? 3a plus 2, is there any GCF? And before you say no, every grouping has a 1 in common. I can always pull out a 1. So maybe 3 and 2, there's nothing in common besides the 1, and the A and the air, there's nothing in common there as well. So I can definitely pull out a 1. And here's why I would want to pull out the 1. Because what happens is if I pull out a 1, 1 times 3a will get me back to 3a. 1 times 2 will get me back to 2. Now, they both have 3a plus 2 in common. And I can put together the 2a plus 1 and the 3a plus 2, and I'm done, right? That's if you feel like you get stuck. If you get stuck, you can think about, can I pull out a 1? If I can pull out a 1, great. If you don't remember that, all you need to do is rewrite it plus 3a plus 4a plus 2. Rewrite that middle term in a different order, regroup, and now I can pull out a 3a, leaving behind 2a plus 1, and I can pull out a 2, 2a plus 1, and now I can factor out the 2a plus 1 and leave behind the 3a plus 2. So I don't want you to think that if you get stuck that you can't do it. Either think about pulling out the GCF of a 1 or rewrite the middle term just in the other order, and then you'll see that it may flow a little easier. So that's it for this video. Until next time, be seeing you.